Hello students, welcome to the solution video of Cyclic Test 2 paper. The subject that we're going to discuss is economics. Now this was a 30 marks paper and the portion that it covered included theory of demand, right? The second chapter from your textbook. Now this paper was divided into two sections, that is section A and section B. Section A comprised of only one main question, that is question 1, but it had 5 sub-questions under it. Each of these sub-questions comprised of 2 marks weightage, so totaling up your section A to 10 marks, right? And section B had 3 main questions under it, question 2, question 3, question 4. Now each of these main questions had 2 sub-questions under each sub-question comprising of 5 marks weightage. So you see that you had an option of 30 marks. Out of the 30 marks question, you had to attempt for only 20 marks in section B, which means in section B, you do have a choice of attempting the question and writing the answer of your life. But in section A, you do not have that choice. You have to compulsorily attempt all the questions, right? So moving on to solving the paper. First of all, you will write the name of the section on top, section A, and then go about and write the question number and the sub-question, right? That is important because it becomes easier for the paper corrector to check your paper. If you do not mention that, it becomes difficult to track what answer you have, what question you have answered to. So it is important, children, that you write the question number and the sub-question very clearly and neatly. So starting with the first question, that is question 1A. The question asked is, what are the factors responsible for the downward sloping demand curve? So for such kind of questions, you do not just start writing the factors, right? You take the words from the question and you write the factors affecting or the factors responsible for the downward sloping demand curve are, and then write any 2 factors of your choice, write the heading and explain those 2 factors. You will not leave it there by just writing the headings. Please write the headings and their suitable explanations too. Yes, for 2 marks also, you have to write heading and you have to write the explanation. Just restrict to 2 headings and 2 explanation for those headings. Now, if you've done that, very good, you've earned your 2 marks. Now, the next question is question 1B. What are the main assumptions to the law of demand, right? So again, start with the statement, the main assumptions of the law of demand are, and then write the assumptions. Now students, there is no heading and explanation to the assumptions, right? So you will write at least 4 assumptions. 4 assumptions have to be mentioned. It has to be numbered correctly, or you could use bullet points also to write these assumptions, but 4 assumptions are required. Do not restrict to writing only 2 assumptions, like 4 assumptions. Okay, so here we've written that there is no change in the price of related goods, there is no change in the income of consumers, there is no change in the taste and preferences of the consumer, and there is no change regarding the expectations of future changes in the future prices by the consumer. Right? Moving on to question 1C. The question asks, give any 2 factors which can lead to a rightward shift of the demand curve for a commodity. Now students, when this is asked, make it a point that you first mention what is or what causes the rightward shift. Now, what is the rightward shift? Right? You will write that when the demand of a commodity increases because of other factors changing, but your price for the commodity remaining constant, it leads to a rightward shift of the demand curve. So you mention this, these words have to be there, and then you go about and write the answer to the question that is actually asked. So what is the question? What are the factors for this? So what are the factors? Which is the other factors. What are the other factors? It can be anything. You can write anything here. We have mentioned that there is an increase in the income of the consumer. There is an increase in the price of substitute goods. It can be the prices of related goods, right? The taste and preferences of the consumers. So it could be anything that you are comfortable with. You can write any 2 factors, but write the heading and explain the heading, right? So you write 2 factors affecting or causing a rightward shift of the consumer and a rightward shift of the demand curve of the commodity, and you will write the heading as well as the explanation for these 2 points. Since it's of 2 marks, you write 2 causes or 2 factors and write their explanation. Now question 1D is, now it is a more practical question rather than a theoretical question. So you have to use your theoretical knowledge to solve this question. The question is, if the price of petrol increases and the price of cars remain constant, how would the consumer react to the situation? Now students, first of all, try to think. Now the two commodity that is mentioned in this question is petrol and car. Now what kind of goods are they? They are the type of related goods. What kind of related goods? Yes, complementary goods, which means without petrol, a car cannot run. So when two goods are needed to satisfy one particular want, it is known as a complementary good, right? So car and petrol are complementary goods, which means that the price of one will affect definitely the demand of another. So keep that in mind, right? Now, forget the car. Look at the price of the petrol. They're saying that the price of petrol increases. So tell me what happens to the price, sorry, if the price of the petrol increases, tell me what happens to the demand of petrol. If petrol becomes expensive, अगर पेट्रोल महंगा हो गया तो डेफिनेटली उसका डिमांड कम हो जाएगा. People will stop buying petrol. They will stop buying petrol, or they will buy less of it, right? So if the demand for petrol decreases, definitely the demand for car also reduces. Why? Because without petrol, the car cannot run. The price of another commodity affected the demand for the commodity in question, this car, right? So is this change in the demand of car happening because of its own price? No, it's happening because of the price of its related good, that is petrol. So when there are changes in the demand of a commodity due to other factors, but not because of its own price, then what happens? There is a shift of the demand curve. It can either, now in this case, it is leading to a backward shift, right? So in this answer, you have to mention two things. First of all, you have to mention that the demand for car will reduce. Now, because the demand of car reduces, what happens? How does it affect the demand curve of the car also has to be mentioned. What happens? Yes, there is a backward shift, not just backward shift, there is a leftward shift of the demand curve. So these two words have to be mentioned. First of all, what happens to the demand of car and what happens to the demand curve of car. Both of these things have to be mentioned in your answer. Both of these things are mentioned, then you earn your 2 marks. The next question is question 1E. What is composite demand? Now this is a very easy question, right? Any commodity that has several uses, alternative uses is said to have composite demand. Let me give examples. A computer is demanded for both domestic as well as commercial purpose, so it is having composite demand. Milk is demanded for several uses, so that is also having composite demand. So you can add as many examples as you wish to add, and you can go and take the liberty of writing this answer in your own words. It's quite a simple question. So we're done with section A, that is we're done with the first part of the question paper. Now we move on to the next section. Again, students, it's a new section, section D. You start it on a new page. So you write section D on top, right? And then you start with, you write the question number and the sub-question that you're attempting. Now, since I am attempting question 2, I write question 2 and sub-question A. Now, the question is, state the law of demand and mention the factors that are causing the downward slope of the demand curve. Why does the slope of the demand curve? Why is it downward sloping? Why is the demand curve downward sloping, right? So this shows that this question has 2 parts that you have to answer. So first we'll start solving the first one. Now you have to write the statement of the law of demand, which means you don't have to write the entire thing, draw the schedule of demand curve, draw the demand curve. No, nothing of that. Just write the statement of the law of demand. So what is the statement? Other things being equal, the demand of a commodity is inversely related to the price of a commodity. Which means that when the price of a commodity increases, its demand decreases, and when the price of a commodity decreases, its demand increases. So this is how you write your statement. It has to be exactly word to word. The word inverse relation is very important. It has to be mentioned, and the words other things being equal also has to be there in your statement, right? Remember, students, statement has to be written exactly word to word. You cannot change it or amend it and write it in your own words. Now moving on to answer the next part of the question. The next part of the question asks, why is the demand curve sloping downwards, right? So you start with the statement. The reasons or the factors responsible for the downward sloping demand curve are, first of all, there are only 3 points given in your textbook. You will write all the 3 points. This is a 5-mark answer, right? So you will write 3 points, but make sure you do not restrict the explanation to 3 points, just two or three sentences, but write considerate amount of explanation, and you can write it in your own words, right? So the 3 points are law of diminishing utility, marginal utility, income effect, and substitution effect. You write all the 3 points along with explanation. So if you've written all of this, you've written the statement beautifully, writing everything word to word, then you've written the statement that the reasons responsible for the change for the downward sloping demand curve, and then written the 3 points that are there in your textbook along with their suitable explanation, considerate amount of explanation, and very good. You've earned your 5 marks. Yes. Now moving on to the next question, that is question 2b. Now since students, this is a practical question, right? The question says, uh, explain the demand for a good in relation to the price of the substitute goods with example, which means you have to write the relationship between the price and the demand of substitute goods. So you just think of any two substitute goods that comes to your mind. Take the example of tea and coffee. Now what happens if the price of coffee increases? What happens to the demand of coffee if the price increases for coffee? Yes, the demand for coffee falls. What happens to the demand for tea? If coffee becomes expensive, people are going to switch from using coffee, so they're going to start using tea. So the demand for tea increases. So you see, when the price of coffee increases, the demand for tea also increases, which means that there is a direct relation. Both are moving in the same direction. There is a direct relation between the price of the coffee and the demand of tea, which means there is a direct relation between the price and the demand of substitute goods. To take another example, imagine now the coffee prices are falling. Now when coffee prices are falling, definitely people will stop demanding tea, which means the demand for tea will fall, and they will shift their demand from consuming the tea to consuming coffee, right? So when the price of coffee fell, the demand for tea also fell. So there is a direct relationship between the price and the quantity of substitute goods. So you will explain like this. You can show it with the help of the diagram. Now remember students, while drawing the diagram, it is important that you draw using pencil and scale. No rough diagrams will be entertained. Will be given directly 0, right? Also, the axis has to be mentioned. On the y-axis you measure your price, on the x-axis you measure the quantity. So all of those labeling has to be done. Initial demand has to be given with the name D1, D, and the new demand curve should be given the label P1, right? Original price should be given P, or the new price should be named as P1. Original quantity should be Q, and new price should be Q1. So all of these things have to be kept in mind. All of these labeling has to be done while drawing the diagram. Now moving on to the next question, that is question 3. Question 3 asks, question 3a says, draw a demand curve with the help of a hypothetical individual demand schedule, which means you have to write about individual demand, right? So first of all, you will write what you understand by individual demand. So individual demand is nothing but the quantity of a commodity that is demanded by an individual at a particular price at a particular time. So you first write the meaning of individual demand, right? Since it's a 5-mark answer, you will first write the meaning. Then you will write the next heading. You will draw the demand schedule for individual. You will write the prices. You will write the quantity demand. Again, schedule has to be neatly drawn in a table using your pencil and your scale. No rough diagrams will be entered. Okay, it has to be very neatly drawn using scale and pencil. After that, you will draw your demand. Now, whatever schedule, whatever figures you mention in the schedule, make sure you use the same, you take the help of the same numbers and figures and you construct your demand curve, right? Again, you will write the heading demand curve, construct your demand curve using the figures that you have used in your demand schedule. Name your axis, y-axis, x-axis, name price, quantity. Demand curve has to be drawn neatly, okay? Take a sharp pencil while drawing the demand curve, and you label all your quantities and your prices. Yes, that is how you draw the individual demand curve. Now, once you draw your individual demand curve, it does not stop there, right? You have to provide an explanation also to the demand curve. So how will you write? See, this is how you write. Initially, when the price of the commodity was rupees 5, the quantity demanded was the quantity demanded was 5 kg. Then directly jump to the last figure. When the price increased to rupees 25, quantity demanded reduced to 1 kg. So this shows that there is an indirect relation between the price of a commodity and the quantity, price of a commodity and the quantity of a commodity. And therefore, we have a downward sloping demand curve. So all of these things have to be mentioned in the explanation. First of all, you take the first figure from the schedule, directly jump to the next figure, the last figure, and then say that there is an inverse relation between price and quantity, right? And then you will say that DD is the demand curve and it is downward slope. So all of these points have to be mentioned in your explanation. Explanation is a must. Explanation also carries marks. So all of this you have to write for 5. Now the next question, that is question 3B, is define joint demand with the help of a diagram. Explain the difference between individual demand and market. So first, now clearly there are two parts to this question. First, you will answer the first part. What you mean by joint demand? You can answer it in your own words, that when two commodities are demanded at the same time to satisfy one single want, it is known as a joint demand. You can give examples, it will enhance your answer. Then you will move on to answer the next part, that you have to distinguish between the difference between two things, that is your individual demand and your market demand. So first you will write the meaning of individual demand. You will draw the schedule, right? You have to write it in a table format, students. So you will write, or you can write it in paragraph also, since there are so many diagrams in market schedule, you can write it like this. You will write the meaning of individual demand. You will draw the schedule side in the side, little small one. Okay, not necessarily big schedule has to be drawn. You just have to show two, three quantities and prices. You draw the individual demand curve on the basis of the schedule that you have drawn. Then you will write the market. You will write the heading market demand. You will write the meaning of market demand. You will draw the schedule for market demand, right? And then you will construct the market demand curve. Once you've done this, you're done with the question. Yes, if you've answered all the points correctly, if you've answered all the parts correctly, then you earn your 5 marks. Now moving to the next and the last question of the paper, that is question 4. Now question 4A says, define demand, explain clearly any two factors which determine demand. Okay, first of all, you have to write what you mean by demand, which means you can write it in your own words. But remember, students, there has to be 3 keywords that are there: quantity of a commodity, willing to buy, given price, given time, right? Given price and given time. So these are the 4 keywords that have to be there: quantity of a commodity, willing to buy, price, and given time. So these 4 keywords are there, then you can go ahead and write it in your own words. It may not be exactly word to word, but these 4 keywords have to be there. So you've written the explanation for what demand is. Now moving on to the next part of the question, that is, what are the 2 determinants of demand? What are the 2 factors affecting demand? First, you write the statement. The 2 determinants of demand, the 2 factors affecting the demand of a commodity are: write the head point, number it, underline it, write the suitable explanation, write examples, right? Then write the second point or the second factor, write the heading, write the explanation, write example. So there are only 2 factors that are asked, right? So try to give as much explanation as possible, try to give examples. It will only enhance your answer, to make your answer lengthy also, and it will justify to the final, right? So this is what we will cover in the price, in the 2 factors. Now since here we mentioned that the 2 factors are, we've mentioned price of the commodity, right? And mentioned one. Okay. Anyway, so you have to mention any two returns, right? You can use the price of the commodity, you can write the price of related goods, the taste and preferences of consumers, the change in the rate of interest, or the changes in the credit facility, or the income of the consumer. All of these factors you can use anything that you're comfortable with. You can write down into factors. But remember, header points as well as the explanation to these points have to be written. So the last question, that is question 4B, asks, write any three factors that affect the demand of a commodity. Why articles of distinction? What are articles of distinction or the Veblen effect? An exception is given. Now again, you have to write any three determinants. So you will start by writing the three determinants of demand that affect the demand of a commodity. Write the three determinants, write the heading, write an explanation, number them clearly, right? And then move on to answer the next part of the question. Now here clearly, the exception to the law of demand is asked. But what exception? You cannot write anything on your own. It is clearly specified that you have to write the exception, articles of distinction, or the Veblen effect. So you have to be well versed. Now sometimes they do not mention both. They do not write the articles of distinction or the Veblen effect. You just write the Veblen effect. Now when you just see the Veblen effect, you have to remember when they're talking about the Veblen effect, it is the articles of distinction and exception that you're talking about, right? So you have to remember that the articles of distinction and Veblen effect are synonymous. Okay, they are one and the same. So if I mention just the Veblen effect, you remember that it is an articles of distinction that you have to talk about. So you will explain that point, and you will nicely explain in 2 to 3 sentences. And once you've done that, you earn your full 5 marks. So this is how you will solve your